Okay, folks, let's hold it down a little bit, okay? There you go. I told Walt, I said, Roger said I had to introduce you today. He said, just say Walt Cross. But I'm going a little bit further than that. Walt lives in the Smoky Mountains of eastern Tennessee. That's one of my favorite places, where he and his family serve in their community with a small ministry called Appalachian Ministries. Through their health food store, it's called the Mustard Seed, they are able to provide lifestyle education and lectures in the public school system, businesses, churches, and one-on-one. Walt's formal education was in conventional health care administration and worked in that field for 20 years. Walt then accepted an offer to work as the director of an international lifestyle center where the methods of addressing health concerns took a more proactive approach and looking for root causes. Have you ever had a doctor trying to find a root cause, or do they just give you a prescription? He has found this proactive approach to addressing health concerns to be much more effective way in addressing chronic diseases. Walt usually speaks in Seventh-day Adventist churches throughout his conference, but other conferences throughout the United States. He's also spoken in Canada, Bermuda, Venezuela, and Rwanda. And he is also a fire chief, which he serves his community in that category too. And if you ever seen any of his videos on YouTube this morning, last night 11:30 when he knocked on my door, I thought, I've been watching you on the phone before you got here. So anyway, we're glad to have you. And also, Mary Lou, right here. This is his lovely wife. And we're glad to have them both with us here today. Thank you.
That work okay? Good. All right. Well, it's good to be here with y'all. This morning, I'd like to look at, do we have a mission? What is our mission and who's responsible? Who's worked in corporate America? Anybody worked in corporate America? Did they have a mission statement? Yes. I remember one of my finance professors at UT, he worked for Coca-Cola. And every year, Coca-Cola, their board of directors, looks at what is their mission statement. And based on that mission statement, determines what they do 25 years out, their 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 year plan. And if you want to do anything at Coca-Cola, and you're working the line, you're filling the bottles or whatever it is, and you say, I got a new idea. If it doesn't match the mission statement, it doesn't get done. Now you can send it up the chain of command, and once a year when the board of directors meets, they go, oh, Henry down on the line, he came up with this idea. That's pretty good. Then they adjust the mission statement, and then everything's done from there. But a mission statement is what drives us. It's what determines what we do. And then, who is responsible? And this morning I'd like to look at the medical missionary work and identify what is our mission and who is responsible. It was Friday morning, and General Lee was going from Fredericksburg to Culpeper. Culpeper, how many of y'all have seen that flag that says, "Don't tread on me"? Well, that came from Culpeper. That was from the Revolutionary War. And the rattlesnake is because, did you ever wonder why it was a rattlesnake on there? Well, the rattlesnake is warning you. It warns you and it says, don't mess with me, I'm over here. Well, the Minutemen of Culpeper, back in the Revolutionary War, they made a flag for the British. And it was, don't tread on us, we'll bite you. They were shaking the little rattles. You're coming over here, don't mess with us. Well, that's where that came from. Well, it was Friday morning. Lee was leaving Fredericksburg. He was going to Culpeper. And from Culpeper, he then was going to go over to the Shenandoah Valley and go north up to a town in Pennsylvania called, or an area called what? Gettysburg, yeah, July 3rd. Well, this was June 5, 1863. June 5. July 3 was Gettysburg. Now, Lee was leaving Fredericksburg. He was heading to Culpeper. Lincoln found out. He sent Hooker down to try to stop him. And as Lee was going, Hooker was going to catch him at the diagonal, but missed him. If Hooker had caught him, we probably wouldn't have had Gettysburg. Well, Lee made his way. That same day, I'm sharing this story because this is how long it's been. This is how long it's been. Was that event with Lee a long time ago? That was a long time ago. That same morning, there was a group of people in Battle Creek, Michigan. And they started there in Battle Creek and going for Otsego, Michigan, I think is how you pronounce it. I pronounce a lot of things different, probably like y'all do. And they're going to Otsego, and there was an evangelistic series going on there. Each conference was having an evangelistic series, and this was the Michigan Evangelistic Series. And they were actually told not to do it for 1 month. They were told them to do it until there was no interest. And that could be how long? 6 months, 12 months. Keep doing the evangelistic series until there's no interest in continuing. A different approach than today. So there's a bunch of buggies got loaded up there in Battle Creek, and they started to Otsego. That evening, they get to R.J. Lawrence's and Emmy Cornell's. R.J. Lawrence and Emmy Cornell were the ones who were the evangelistic, and they began May 25th, just a few days before. So I hadn't been going long. So Elder White and Mrs. White were part of that group, and they wanted to go and support them in this evangelistic series. So they load up, and the Whites stayed at Aaron Hilliard's home a few miles outside of town. And what happened is as the evening was coming close on Friday evening, they go over to the house to have sundown worship. The people came in, and Mr. Hilliard asked Mrs. White if she would have the prayer to start the evening program, the sundown, welcoming Sabbath. And she started praying. And she walks over to her husband, Elder White. He was having some health issues, and she put her hand on his shoulder, and she started praying. And she went into vision. And that vision was the first health message that we got. It's interesting, though. What was the date when she talks about and when she writes about this vision? June 6th. Now, wait a minute. June 6th. But yet, it was supposedly June 5. So I went to Google and I brought up a calendar from 1863. And yes, Friday was June 5. Well, I go back to Google and I say, okay, when did Lee leave Fredericksburg to go to Culpeper? June 5. Was she mistaken? Did she miswrite the date? I could only think of one thing. And so I called the White Estates. And the director of the White Estates was gone, but the assistant director was there. And I said, here's my question. I can only think of one thing. He said, yes. It's because it was after Sunday that she had the dream. See, our pioneers in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, the date changed at sundown every day of the week, not at midnight. Isn't that interesting? We should ever remember the object or mission of the medical missionary work is to point sin-sick men and women to the man of Calvary who taketh away the sin of the world. It is not to tell them 28 beliefs immediately. It's to point them to Jesus. Now, who is the sin-sick soul? Pardon? It's everybody. I had this girl come by a couple years ago. Mary Lou was down in Birmingham. It was in 2020. This girl comes in. Is it this thing? What is that? And she looked like a whooped dog. She looked plumb bad. And she had just taken herself off drugs, heavy drugs, real heavy drugs, cold turkey, and she was having problems. And went to the emergency room. ER said, we don't deal with that here. Go see if Walt, see if he can help you out. And so she came over. And we started talking. She was early 30s. She had two twin 10-month-olds. She'd lost her job, lost everything. She didn't have nothing. And she was living with her mom. And she was needing some help dealing with these withdrawals that she was having. And as I was helping her out, I said, where do you go to church? She said, I can't go to church. I said, why can't you go to church? She said, I'm not perfect. She says, only perfect people can go to church. And I said, you ever read about this guy called David? I said, you ain't killed nobody yet. She said, no. I said, this guy got a lady pregnant. He was watching her outside and saw her naked, got her pregnant, then went and had her husband killed so he could have her and do a cover-up. And he was even known as, he was after God's own heart. You ain't killed nobody yet. She says, no. And then I talked to her about this guy. His name was Paul. Did he kill people? He killed a mess of people. Again, I asked her, you ain't killed nobody, have you? She says, no. And I said, we're all sinners. And the church house is a hospital for sinners. And so as it talks about this here, we should ever remember that the object or mission of the medical missionary work is to point sin-sick men and women to who? To Jesus. To take away the sin of the world. It is not to reverse diabetes. It is not to reverse cardiovascular disease. It is not to get rid of a hangnail. It is to point them to Jesus. That is our object. And yes, we do it through the medical missionary work, but our object is to point folks to Jesus. And what are we told in Matthew? Matthew 28. And Jesus came and spake to them, saying, all power is given unto me in heaven and earth. Go you therefore and teach all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, and of the Son, and the Holy Ghost. It's very clear, all three. Teaching them to observe all things whatsoever you command, and what I have commanded you. And lo, I am with you always, even to the end of the world. And when you get into Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and Jesus starts healing people, you can't turn a page, he isn't healing people. I mean, he's healing people all the time. So therefore, teaching them to observe all things whatsoever I have commanded you. Did he command us to help with medical needs? He did. Yeah. Who is responsible? I think a little different. I grew up on a dairy farm, and so I think very simple. And then when I went to school, I took law classes, and I just think, just process. And so work with me as I think this way. The medical missionary work should be a part of the work of every church in our land. Is that clear? Now, let me share with y'all, I'm a little different. If I come and if I tell you something, And then if I go over and I tell you something, is there a difference between with authority, what I told you and what I told you? It still came from me, right? Is that true? It still came from me. Okay. Who inspired the Bible? Which came from God. The quote I read just a moment ago. We'll use this one right here. Who inspired that? Therefore, who? God. So again, I'm just an old farm boy. If God said to one person, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Moses, or if he told this author, is it still from God? Is it the same? Does that make sense? Okay. Some people don't understand that. But we just gotta, but to me, that's just horse sense. So, I was in a little town in Virginia, and a little old Covington town, and they had a little church, and they had 4 members. 4 members. And the youngest was in her 80s. It was 4 ladies. The youngest, some were in their 80s. One or two were in their 70s. 4 ladies. But could they then say, oh, we're just a little church, we only got 4 old ladies in here, we don't have to do the medical missionary work? Well, they got in the car and they drove there, so that means they're able to get out of bed. What's it say? The medical missionary work should be a part of the work of what? Every. That means even the Covington, Virginia 7th Adventist Church with 4 ladies. God wants ministers and church members to take a decided, active interest in the medical missionary work. Now, what's a decided? It means you're going to do it. If you decide you're going to do something, it's not, well, I'm going to think about it. A decided means you're going to do it. You've already made a decision. That's exactly right. And then an active interest. There's people who may have interest, but are they actively involved? And that's what it's talking about here. So it's do you see how clear God is here? It's very clear. As I would read things in law papers, and I'd read them, and you learn to pick out certain things. That's very clear. The medical missionary work is not to be divorced from the church. All new converts need training. So the medical missionary work is not to be set aside of and say that's something we used to do. Don't divorce that. The minister will often be called upon to act the part of a physician. He should have a training that will enable him to administer the simpler remedies for the relief of suffering. Ministers and Bible workers should be. Now, how many of us can be Bible workers? All of us, right? So this means us too. The minister and us should prepare themselves for this line of work, for in doing it, they are following the example of Christ. They should be as well prepared by education and practice. Now, that's a huge thing. There's a lot of academic knowledge out there. But can they take it from here and put it to here? When that neighbor has a problem with congestive heart failure, when that neighbor has a problem with high blood pressure, can you do something about it? Can you identify? Well, let's see. Do you have issues with stress? Do you have issues with dehydration? Do you have issues with obesity? Do you have issues with sodium, the conductivity in your body, the electricity? Do you have issues with your kidneys? Do you have issues with clogged arteries, hardening of the arteries, heart issues? Go through the process. What could be causing the high blood pressure so that we can get to root cause? So it's not just academia, but then can you say, okay, so it is stress. What can we do for the issues of stress? Or what kind of program can you do for losing weight? Not just having academia. And there's a lot of academia out there just having knowledge of, but we need to be able to, they should be as well prepared by education and practice That means to be able to practical part. To combat disease of the body as they are to heal the sin-sick soul by pointing to the great physician. They are fulfilling the commission which Christ gave to the 12 and afterward to the 70. In whatsoever city ye enter, heal the sick that are therein, and say unto them, the kingdom of God is come nigh unto you. Christ stands by their side, as ready to heal the sick as when he was on this earth in person. So when you go out there and you help that neighbor, who's willing to be there right beside you? Yes. That's what we're told. You got an angel there. You've got Christ there to help you as much as he helped when he was here. But this is interesting here. Those who are sick in body are nearly always sick in soul. And when the soul is sick, the body is made sick. Isn't that something? But when we go back to that one before, people say, I just can't do it. No, you can't do it. If you think it's you doing it, you're going to fall and going to bust your nose. It is God that does it. It is. And so Christ stands with us. And is Christ God? He is. Christ stands by their side as ready to heal the sick as when he was on this earth in person. And so as we work with people, you can have the confidence that Christ is there working with you. It's not just you by yourself. That's huge, y'all. Is it not? The indifference among our ministers in regard to health reform and the medical missionary work is surprising. Even those who do not profess to be Christians treat the subject with greater respect than do some of our own people. And these are going in advance of us. I don't know if you've ever worked with New Age people. I work with all kinds of people. We don't want to be this kind of person. I had this lady come in not long ago, and she was coming through from a certain town up in Maryland, a big highfalutin town. I had a customer. She says, "Oh, my sister's from that town." She says, "Might you know her?" She says, "No." She says, "I only associate with people who go to my church." There's a problem with that, y'all. As we work with people out there, we will see that there are people who do not even believe in God that are going before us in health. Just look at the New Age folks. Look at Harvard. Look at Duke. Cornell. Whoever watched Forks Over Knives? Remember T. Colin Campbell? He was my professor. I took nutrition from him from Cornell. Now, Campbell is a Christian. I can tell you that. But there's a lot of these institutions that aren't Christians. But they're teaching about nutrition. They're teaching about exercise. They're teaching about all these laws of health except one. And which is that? And so when you go to that person and you say, "Mr. Jones, let me tell you about these 8 laws of health, nutrition and exercise and what." I heard about them. Yeah. Mayo Clinic's talking about that. I got it. You don't have to tell me about them. And they dismiss you because they already know. They already know it all. But they don't. Mayo didn't teach about trusting God. See how Satan works with that? He's taking advantage of that. And they are. Many of them are going in advance of us. It's very, very true. I mean, I go and yesterday as I work with people all day long and I'm looking at what is the latest research that Mayo's finding on this, or what's the latest research that Harvard is finding, or I'm using Cleveland Clinic, or even UAB. What are they learning? What are they teaching? And they're teaching some good stuff. And you just kind of got to weed some of it, but there's some good science there. You will never be ministers after the gospel order till you show a decided interest in medical missionary work. the gospel of healing, blessing, and strength. That's a pretty strong statement. The medical missionary work must be recognized. Those who go forth as ministers of the gospel should be intelligent upon this subject. Those ministers who, after many years' experience, have no true appreciation of the medical missionary work should not be appointed to preside over our churches, for they are not walking in the light of the truth for this time. Ministers who have not heeded the light God has given upon health reform should not be placed in charge of workers who love the truth and appreciate health and temperance reform in all its bearings, for what help can such be to the church or to the workers? I started firefighting 43 years ago. How can I be effective as a fire chief if I don't know how to fight fire myself? Can I? I can't teach foundations. I can't look at a house fire and see if it's safe for guys to go in. I can't look at a wreck and say, here's what you need to do. It is through experience that I can then teach my firefighters, that I can lead my firefighters, that I can identify right from wrong. There's new theories that come up and say, oh, let's try this. Well, we might, but here's the problems with this, this, and this. Because I've been there. Our leadership, both local and as far as it goes, needs to have that knowledge to be able to direct the medical missionary work. Does that make sense? How can they have health reform and churches be a part of the medical missionary work if they themselves do not know the medical missionary work? I was in Sweden speaking last year. And this is a classic example. I'm in Sweden last year. And I go, and I like fire departments. I learn as I go. And I went to this fire department in Sweden. And they gave me a tour, and it was, I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I learned. As I finished, I went back through, and I met the fire chief. It was a lady who had no knowledge of firefighting. They had promoted her, or moved her from law enforcement over to firefighting. And so I started asking her questions from one chief to another chief. She didn't even know what I was talking about. And you know where she was? She was sitting there in the kitchen just reading the paper. She wasn't helping her men because she didn't know what they did. She cannot be effective because she doesn't have knowledge of that industry. Maybe in law enforcement she could do a good job, but not in firefighting. We have come to a time where every member of the church should take hold of medical missionary work. Does it say some or does it say every? Every. And so you say, well, Walt, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a nurse, I can't teach nutrition, I can't do this, or I can't do this. What can I do? On the fire department, I have members that aren't firefighters. I've got a lady who has, she's one of our canine handlers. She's got a bloodhound. Now she knows what she's doing there. If I get a lost child, if I get a lost hiker, if I get a lost geriatric, she knows what to do with that bloodhound. I don't need her to fight fires. I need her to work that specific in search and rescue. I have a lady who does she's my secretary and bookkeeper. I don't need her to fight fires. I need her to keep the books straight. Because when the state of Tennessee comes in and audits us, I need them books good. She's got a degree in accounting. And they looked at the books and they said, wow, because she's good at bookkeeping. And so she's still though part of the fire department. So every member of the church can have some part in the medical missionary work within our specialties. You might be the person who sits at the desk and you got a real nice smile and you're real orderly, and as people come in for cooking classes, You can take the names and you might know the people because you're from around here. And you can welcome Billy Bob and Susie Jane and whatever. So there's different. You may not be a person up there teaching classes, but there's a work to be done. The person teaching classes, can they be down there taking people's names when they're coming in? No. We have come to a time when every member of the church should take hold of the medical missionary work. The world is a laser house filled with the victims of both physical and spiritual disease. Everywhere people are perishing for a lack of knowledge of the truths that have been committed to us. The members of the church are in need of what? Will you agree? I agree. That they may realize their what? Responsibility to impart these. What are these? The medical missionary truths. We need to wake up. Why do we need to wake up? We'll see. We have come to a time when every member of the church should take hold of the medical missionary work. The members of the church are in need of an awakening that they may realize their responsibility to impart these truths. Those who've been enlightened by the truth are to be light bearers to the world. Now get this. Now who is the author? Who's the author? Who? The Holy Spirit. God. Okay, this is from God. To hide our light at this time is to make a what? So what happens when God tells you you've made a terrible mistake? Is that serious? Can you imagine working for a corporation and the CEO says you have made a terrible mistake? You're in trouble. And this, to hide our light. That what light? The medical missionary work. At this time is to make a terrible mistake. The message to God's people today is arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. I call this time the time of ochre. How many of y'all have grown ochre? Anybody grown ochre? So let's say it's Friday morning. You go out there and that ochre is about this long. Is it ready to be picked? No. You're going away for the weekend. You'll be back late Sunday night, so Monday morning before going to work, you can go out there and pick it. And it's this long. It's too fibrous now. Mary Lou will tell you, I like ochre. I love ochre. I like just going out and picking ochre. You got it. That's perfect right there. That size right there, just like your finger. I like eating out of the garden. And if it's too short, if it's too long, it's not good. But it goes quickly. That period of time is very short. It is critical. I believe we are in the time of ochre to where we have an opportunity to share. You just look around what's going on out there right now. They're looking at changing our money. If we go to this new digital money, it can close up your money, but also it can determine what you spend that money for or how much you spend that money for. It's just a whole new thing going on. As we look at I believe time is short, and we only have so much time to share with people. Also, right now, people are interested in health. And my daddy said you got to make hay when the sun shines. Who's ever cut hay? You understand that statement? Can you cut hay in the rain? Can you cut hay if it's going to rain, tomorrow morning and you can't get it baled up? No. You need a period of time before the rain. And we've got a little bit of time before the rain. And if we don't cut it now, there's not going to be time to cut it because it's too late. You can't cut it in the rain. It'll mildew. Every person should have a knowledge of nature's remedial agencies and how to apply them. Every person, that means all of us, should have a knowledge of nature's remedial agencies. So it's that academic knowledge, but it's not just the academia, it's also how do you apply it. It is essential both to understand the principles involved in the treatment of the sick and to have a practical training that will enable one rightly to use this knowledge. Now, it's a whole different talk that I give. But God's systematic healthcare system. Where does God's systematic healthcare system, where is the foundation of it? Okay, but where in the St. Elmo Seventh Adventist Church, this community, where is it? Right here. And across the street. This is the core to the medical missionary work for this church. The church is where you get trained. The church is where it's organized, or it should be. And then y'all are the medical missionaries. Y'all are the ones that goes out and does it. This is where you bring the people back to. But the church is the foundation, it's the core. You do training across the street where you learn hydrotherapy, where you learn about herbs, where you learn about nutrition, where you learn about physiology. We spend too much time learning pharmacology. If we just learn physiology, we'd understand it. See, when I worked in healthcare for 20 years, I never saw a patient care plan that said reversing diabetes. Never. It was diabetic management through pharmacology. When I left corporate America and healthcare, I was crazy. They looked straight at me and said, "You are crazy. You cannot reverse diabetes." And then Mary Lou will tell you I'm a little on the crazy side. I'll tell you what I think. And I said, "You can even improve type 1 diabetes." And then they looked at me and said, "You are stupid." Looked me straight in the eye and said, "You are stupid. You will ruin your career in healthcare. You cannot do anything with type 1 diabetes." But guess what? You can. We now see over a 98% reversal rate of type 2 diabetes. Over a 98% reversal rate. We'll talk about it this afternoon. Why? Understanding physiology, not pharmacology. Christ commits to his followers an individual work, a work that cannot be done by proxy. Ministry to the sick and the poor, the giving of the gospel to the lost, is not to be left to committees, just the health committee, or organized charities. Individual responsibility, individual effort, personal sacrifice is the requirement of the gospel. Who said this? Who said it? God. God said it's the requirement. He requires us to do this if we want to be his people. In choosing men and women for his service, God does not ask whether they possess worldly wealth, learning, or eloquence. Aren't you glad of that? Yeah. He asked, do they walk in such light, in such humility that I can teach them my way? You know, I would much rather hire a nurse straight out of school than to hire a nurse from another healthcare institution because she knew everything. Or whatever department it was. Because even though I worked in regular healthcare, I had high expectations. And I'd rather teach them how to do it, how we did it, to get to those outcome indicators that I was looking for. Can I put my words into their lips? This is God talking here. Will they represent me? And that's a big problem. Even in the medical missionary work, you'll have people who go and they'll say, look what I did. They write books and they do this. Look what I did. We can't do a thing, y'all. It is only God that does it. Who's ever been a nurse? Okay. Anybody ever worked in an OR? Okay, you worked in an OR. Were you a scrub nurse? Okay, good. Perfect example. Did you do the surgery? No? Okay, were you an important part? So, when he said scalpel, did you need to know what a scalpel was? If you handed him a forceps, was that a problem? or a sponge? Or if he said, sponge, did you need to know what to hand him? Well, when you go to help a person, you say, okay, God, help me out here. What do you want me to do? And he says, I want you to do a hydrotherapy treatment. And if you don't know what a hydrotherapy treatment is, how can you do it? If he says, I want you to do a cleanse. I want you to put them on an exercise program. I want you to whatever it might be. I want you to use this herb or this decoction or this infusion. And he says, and then I'm then going to bless that, make that work, but you got to know what that is, that modality, in order to do it. It is not us doing it. You didn't do the surgeries. Well, can I put my words into their lips? Will they represent me? God will use me. And all my people say, no one's going to use me. Have you ever heard that? Nobody's going to use me. But God wants us to be used by Him. God will use men who are willing to be used. God will use, men or women. It is not the most brilliant or the most talented persons whose work produces the greatest and most lasting results. It's interesting. There was a place in Virginia. It was called West Vaco. And West Vaco was a paper mill. And when you went to work for West Vaco, you had to present them wherever your level of education was last, whether you're a PhD, a master's, undergraduate, high school, whatever that last degree of education that you achieved, they wanted several things. They wanted to see what your scores were in school. They wanted to see where you placed in your class. They wanted to look at your attendance. They were not as interested in your IQ. They would rather have a person who had a moderate IQ but placed well in class because they worked hard to get there. Because they told me, Walt, when people come to us with a high IQ, they think they know everything. God doesn't want a person who thinks they know everything. Are they going to work hard and do what He tells them? Men and women are needed who have heard a message from heaven. The most effective workers are those who respond to the invitation, take my yoke upon you and learn of me. Our church schools are ordained by God to prepare the children for this great work. Here, children are to be instructed in the special truths for this time and in practical missionary work. They are to enlist in the army of workers to help the sick and the suffering. Children can take part in the medical missionary work by their jots and tittles and help to carry it forward. I was in a medical ministry. I was in a health ministries class meeting just recently. And we had the people in the church that were on the health ministries team developing all kinds of classes and courses that we're going to do. And they said, well, okay, we need only a doctor, a nurse, maybe a nutritionist. Maybe a nutritionist. They can present. Crazy. Can other people present? Yes, they can. Sure they can. And here you're saying put children out there? What a disparity. Mary Lou and I are doing a class up in Collegedale at McDonald Roads Church back around 2005. We did it Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, all week long. We taught the children from kindergarten to senior in high school how to do medical missionary work. We had a team come in. We taught therapy. We taught how to, just all kinds of things on herbs and nutrition and the 8 laws of health. And we taught a lot to these kids. It was a whole week, all day long, starting on Sunday. 6 days we taught. Well, 6.5 because Friday we got off at noon. Wednesday morning, a lady comes in. She says, I need to tell you what happened last night. She says, I picked up my daughter from these classes, kindergartner. We got home, and she said, I had a terrible migraine. She said, my little kindergartner took me into the kitchen, sat me down on a chair, got 2 buckets, one put hot water in one of them, put ice cold water in the other one, put ice in there, put water, got 2 washcloths, put the hot one in, set my feet in there. I think I made it bad. Took 2 washcloths, put it in the ice water, wrung one out, put it back in my head, put one to my forehead, got a glass of water, and gave me a glass of water every 10 minutes. She said my migraine went away. Kindergartners. And here in this church ministry meeting, they're saying, oh, you've got to have an MD or an RN, but maybe if you had a nutrition class, we can let you teach nutrition, but we might just need to let the doctors and nurses teach nutrition. Now, how much nutrition did the doctors and nurses get versus that person who has a nutrition degree? Are we not a little messed up, y'all? All of us can teach. We really are. And again, that's that brainwashing I got when I went to school, and I worked in that for 20 years. But it's not accurate. Children can take part. Again, who wrote this? God. So God said kids can take a part of it. Children can take part in the medical missionary work, and by their jots and tittles can carry it forward. Now, I'm not saying doctors and nurses are not valuable. Absolutely they are. But we cannot just say only doctors and nurses can teach our medical missionary program. All of us can be part of that in some way. There is a message regarding health reform to be born in every church. There's a message regarding health reform to be, that's to be, not could be, to be, born in every church. There's a work to be done in every school. Neither principal nor teachers should be entrusted with the education of the youth until they have a practical knowledge of this subject. Some have felt at liberty to criticize and question and find fault with health reform principles, of which they knew little by experience. Again, there's that academia thing. They should stand shoulder to shoulder, heart to heart, with those who are working in right lines. Is it clear? I mean, God makes it very clear. Why is the medical missionary work so important? Medical missionary work is the pioneer work of the gospel, the door through which the truth for this time is to find entrance to many homes. There's a church in our area. Just weren't meeting the needs of what the upstairs said it needed to do, so the upstairs closed it. The local community, it's a black church. I don't remember what our black conference is there in Tennessee, but their conference closed it because they just weren't meeting the criteria what they wanted. And guess what happened? The members bought the building. And guess what they did? They're doing church there. And I was talking to a little lady. She's from, it used to be called Antigua. Now they call it Antigua. But she came in, was it yesterday or Thursday? Yesterday. She and her husband. And he was telling me, he said, Bernie goes house to house, knocking on doors. Says, you got any health problems I can help you with? Guess what? They're joining their church. Through going neighbor to neighbor. Do you got health problems? We can help you. It's an entering wedge. God's people are to be genuine. So God's people are to be genuine medical missionaries. So are there not? So what's another word? What's the opposite of genuine? Fake or false? So there must be false. I remember a physician once told me, he says, I'm a medical missionary. I said, what do you do? He says, I pray with my patients. But he does allopathic. Now, I'm not saying there's a problem there. We should pray with our patients. And there's a time we need allopathic. If I'm driving home and I have a wreck and I have a compound fracture, I need allopathic, guys. A charcoal poultice ain't going to fix it. God's people are to be genuine medical missionaries, for they are to learn to minister to the needs of body, both soul and body. Soul and body. The Puritan selfishness is to be shown by our workers, as with the knowledge and experience gained by practical work. There's that practical thing again. They go out to give treatments to the sick. The Puritan selfishness. I truly believe if you take the universe, and I'm just an old farm boy, so I got to think of things simple. The purest bottom line of the universe is two words. Take it all and put it down to just basics. It's either love or it's self. Prior to Lucifer going nuts, it was just love. And then Lucifer introduced something called self. That's the foundation. And so as we look here at, the purest unselfishness, we've got to be unselfish, is to be shown by our workers as, with the knowledge and experience gained by practical work, they go out to give treatments to the sick. And that's how we teach people God's love, God's unselfishness, as we share love and as we share unselfishness. You go help somebody with a health problem. Why are you helping them? You're not making any money. Everybody thinks you got to have money for something today. But if you go and you help that neighbor or that person who's having a health issue, and you're not charging them, you're not gaining any benefit for yourself, or you may even be spending your own money, people go, what's wrong with them? Yeah, why are they doing that? But then when you say it is Jesus that's doing the healing, you're giving that credit to Him. To share an example, it's so easy to get going here. I was helping a fellow with type 2 diabetes. He had been the former mayor, the former sheriff of the county where LA, California is. I don't know what county that is. He and his wife were there. I'm helping him with his issues of diabetes. Mary comes up and she says, I need your help a minute. She normally doesn't pull me away from somebody, but she did. So she pulled me over, and this lady was standing there by the door, and she was squalling. And y'all know what squalling is. Y'all told me. And I said, what's wrong? And she said, I just left the doctor, and he said, my husband is a 10 of 10 in severity. She said, I went to the pharmacy across the street, CVS Pharmacy, and they told me they had nothing else to help him. See, her husband had vancomycin-resistant MRSA. That's serious stuff. I don't know what tool he was using, but he said it was 10 of 10 in severity. There was no hope for him, according to that doctor. She went to the pharmacist and begged him for some more medicine. And he said, ma'am, there is nothing else for your husband. This was 2005. And they sent me over to you and said, go see Walt, see if he has anything over there. So she came in and she said, do you have anything to help my husband? And I said, what your husband has is very serious. I have something, but I've never used it for vancomycin resistant staph. MRSA. I don't know if it'll work. Would you like to try it? I said, I know it works for MRSA very well. It blows the doors off vancomycin. Works very well. But what he has is resistant to. And she says, I'll do anything. I want my husband to live. And I said, okay. So I went back and got it, came up, and I said, man, this will not heal your husband. Only God will heal your husband. I said, do you mind? Do you still want to use it? She says, I told you I'll do anything for my husband to live. I said, do you mind if Mary Lou and I pray that God will bless this? She says, please. So we did. She went home. She came back 1 week later. She was smiling just big time. And I said, how's your husband? She said, he's a 4 out of 10. Now that's huge. In 1 week, that is huge, y'all. According to the physician. She leaves. She comes back 2 weeks later. It's been a total of 3 weeks now. This lady is elated. She says, my husband no longer has it. It's gone. Now that's a miracle, y'all. That is a miracle. But this is the miracle. I forgot to tell you something. I asked her that first day. I said, does your husband believe in God? She goes, nope. I said, do you believe in God? She goes, nope. 3 weeks later, this is a miracle. After the lady tells me it's plumb gone, no more disease, she tells me on her own, my husband now believes in God. That's a miracle, y'all. Now, and she's gone. That was in 2005. And 2020. I'm standing by my herb cabinet. Some of y'all been to my store. And I'm standing by the herb cabinet, and I'm working with some things. A lady walks in, and she says, can you help me? My husband's wanting to quit smoking. Do you have anything my husband can use to quit smoking? I said, sure. Get a 1/4 of a cup of honey, 3/4 of a cup of lemon juice, and 1/3 of a teaspoon of peppermint essential oil. Mix it up. Take a nip anytime you get hungry. Now, usually I have to explain what that is when I'm in other places like New York City or in Portland, Oregon, but here I don't have to do that. I said, take a nip anytime he gets a hankering. She goes, okay, thank you. She starts walking out the door. I said, but wait a minute. Don't forget the most important thing. She says, is it the peppermint or is it the lemon? I said, no, pray. She says, you don't remember me, do you? I said, no, I don't. And she starts telling me the story. It was that lady. And so I said, I need to talk to you. And so she walks in and I walk up because this lady never stayed around. She'd leave. And I said, how's he doing? And I said, same husband? She says, yes. I said, did it ever come back? No. Does he still believe in God? She goes, oh, yes. And that was a whole different. She goes, oh, yes, he believes in God. And I said, I need to ask you something. I never got a chance to ask you when you were here last time. Do you believe in God? She goes, oh, yes. And she points exactly where she was standing at that time, where she was that very first day she came in. And she says, it all happened right here. I said, so what are you doing? What are you doing for God? She goes, oh, we're very involved in the Lincoln Baptist Church and da-da-da-da. She says, but I've got to go. And she left, and I haven't seen her again. Now, I don't know what God has for her, but has He taken her quantum leaps and her husband? But what if I had said, I can help your husband? What if I said, this will heal your husband? Would that have happened? Would the issue of him believing in God and her believing in God have happened? No. If you want to take the credit, God will not get credit. You got to give it all to Him because You can't do narrow thing except be a scrub nurse. That's all you can do. As they go from house to house, they will find access to many hearts. What did I tell you that Bernie's doing at this little church in Greenville, Tennessee? They're going house to house. Got any health problems I can help you with? Bernie's a good medical missionary. She's teaching the other church members. Remember, where's the headquarters? The church. She's teaching them medical missionary work, house to house, neighbor to neighbor. I remember I was talking with this guy one time. He was the retired vice president of the General Conference. He said, all you have to do in health ministries is have a health expo out there. Or just go hand out some literature and the Holy Spirit will do everything else. I don't think that fella has ever planted a garden. Because remember where Jesus said that we're supposed to be as farmers? Now, who's grown a garden? I go all over the place, and I also teach about the importance of country living to places like New York City. And then poor people in New York City. I've talked to people think all you got to do is on the way, when the time's over, just jump in your car and run. Buy you some apples, eat them apples on the way, spit out the seeds. When you get there, just toss them out and you'll have apple trees growing. Literally, they think that's how you grow a garden. Well, that's what this fella thought about doing missionary work or doing gospel work. It's just all you had to do is just do a one-time thing. No, it's friendship evangelism. It's relationships. It's a growing process. You got to plow the ground. You've got to pick up rocks. You got to pick up sticks. You got to disc it. You got to pick up rocks and sticks. You got to disc it again. You got to pick up rocks. You keep discing it until them rocks, and they still keep growing rocks. But you got to keep picking them up. And then you got to lay a straight line. Daddy taught me, he says, get in that tractor, look at a tree across the field, drop that plow, and go. And don't take your eye off the tree. It's got to be a straight path with intent. With intent. Not just put a garden line like this, a plow line like this. And then you got to pick the weeds. It's a process. It's not just a one-time event. As they go from house to house, they will find access to many hearts. See, you're not going to that neighbor's house really to work on her high blood pressure. You're going to that house to talk about Jesus and show what Jesus can do to help her with her blood pressure and teach her about Jesus' love. And that doesn't happen just in one time. That's multiple visits. Friendship evangelism. Many will be reached who otherwise never would have heard the gospel message. So if we're not going out, there are people who will never hear the message. Now, we're talking life and death here. Is it true? I work in fire stuff where I deal a lot with life and death stuff, some really bad stuff. But life or death that I deal with is only for a couple of years. 20 years, 40 years. But we're talking life and death for eternity. Eternity. Do medical missionary work. Again, who's saying this? So if Jesus was here today and said, I want you to do this, would you feel you need to do it? Yeah, you would. And so here he's saying, do medical missionary work. Thus, you will gain access to the hearts of the people. The way will be prepared for a more decided proclamation of truth. You will find that relieving their physical suffering gives an opportunity to minister to their spiritual needs. The Lord will give you success in this work, for the gospel is the power of God unto salvation. When it is interwoven with the practical life, when it is lived and practiced. I can see in the Lord's providences that the medical missionary work is to be a great entering wedge whereby the diseased soul may be reached. Without health, no one can as distinctively understand or as completely fulfill his obligation to himself. What that means is someone is sick. If a person is sick, you cannot as distinctively understand or as completely fulfill your obligation to yourself or to your fellow beings or to your Creator. Therefore, the health should be as faithfully guarded as the character. Let me read that one more time. Therefore, the health should be as faithfully guarded as the character. Is that important? What is the only thing we can take to heaven? The character. A knowledge of physiology and hygiene should be the basis of all educational efforts. Hygiene. Does that mean just using your deodorant? Hygiene is a word that means how you get something done. Hygiene is the process of something happening. The right hand is used to open doors through which the body may find entrance. So if I wanted to go through this door and my hands are handcuffed behind me, how do I go through that door? Well, I could kick it in like a bull in a china closet. Or I can take my hand, turn it, and walk through. Now, I got guys on the fire department who have a lot of testosterone and they want to kick the door in. Or they want to pull out jaws of life and rip that car door open, and I say, just see if that door opens. That right hand, the right hand is the health message. It takes that doorknob, it opens it, and it opens a door whereby the gospel can walk through. The gospel being the body. What's the most important part? The hand or the body? The gospel. That's the most important. Not the health, but the health is a way by which you can get to somebody, just like that couple. And so, as we use the right hand to open the door, the gospel can walk through, and we don't have to be a bull in a china closet. This is the part the medical missionary work is to act. It is to largely prepare the way for the reception of the truth for this time. A body without hands is useless. In giving honor to the body, honor must also be given to the helping hands, which are agencies of such importance that without them the body can do nothing. Therefore, the body which treats indifferently the right hand, refusing its aid, is able to accomplish what? So could be the reason the gospel is not being spread as it should be is because we're trying to go through like this. And we're being a bull in a china closet, and we're not using the two that go together. So if God, and even the time of Christ, He mixed health and gospel. And so for us to be effective in gospel, He's asked us to mix the two together. Let me finish with this. I had a meeting this last Tuesday night with my firefighters. It's the beginning of the year. And so I went over. We looked at our mission. What is our mission on our fire department? And then I looked at our services. What do we offer our community? We offer fire service. Structural fires, car fires, wildland fires. We do wrecks, motor vehicle accidents. We do search and rescue. We do a lot of search and rescue. I just went out and got 8 kids who were lost up in the mountains just a couple weeks ago. We do a lot of search and rescue. We do medical, where we go out, whether it's on the wreck or we're going to someone's house who's having a heart attack, or unfortunately, the majority of my calls today, I'm doing Narcan. We're doing CPR. It's people who have overdosed. It could be that we're doing hazardous material. We have a whole host of things that we do on the department. But what if I come off the mountain? I live up on the mountain. Come off the mountain, there's I-40. I have two stations. One is down in Hartford, right at I-40, and another one up on the mountains, which is 4 miles from I-40. I live up on the mountain. We get a call in the middle of the night. I come off it, come down, grab a truck either at Station 1 or grab a truck at Station 2 or meet them there, and it's a bad crashed up car. I come down with I'm in a fire truck, so I have my fire hat on. Well, actually, we don't wear our helmet in the fire truck, but we'll say I'm in. It's not safe, but anyway. So let's say I've got my fire hat on, and I say, well, I don't do rescue. We'll just have to wait for a rescue team to come in and rip that car apart. And we're just sitting there. Just sitting there. Or let's say we do rescue and we rip the car open. We say, oh, I don't know medical. Now they're bleeding to death, but I don't know medical. I put my rescue hat on. I put my EMS hat on. I put my hazmat hat on. If it's a search and rescue, I put my search and rescue hat on, where we've been trained to do lost person behavior. And so I have to be trained in all those different disciplines. We have to be trained in 2 disciplines, is all. Gospel and medical missionary here. And if you say, I'll sit down with somebody sometime, and they come in because they have problems with whatever, and we're sitting there talking, and out of the blue, you're closed on Saturdays. Why are you closed on Saturdays? I tell you what, here's my preacher. Let me get his information. Ooh, he's out of town for 2 weeks. I tell you what, I'll have my preacher call you when he gets back to town. Did I lose an opportunity? Does the Holy Spirit influence an interest that could wane away? It could. Do I need to immediately take off that medical missionary? Well, actually, medical missionary does both. But I need to take off that medical component and put on that gospel component and say, well, can I share with you why I close on Saturdays? Do you see how you have to wear both hats? Or the preacher, how he has the gospel and he says, and he goes to someone's house and he says, oh, you don't feel good today? You don't want to do a Bible study? Okay, I'll see you later. I was in Dallas, Texas. We were doing an evangelistic series for Jim Gilley's church. Y'all remember Jim Gilley? He passed away this last summer. He was president of 3ADM. Before that, he was pastor at the Dallas First Church. And we were at Jim's church, and we were going out doing Bible studies. And I went to this lady's house one afternoon, and I said, knocked on the door to do a Bible study with her. And she said, oh, honey, she says, I just don't feel right today. I don't think I can do a Bible study. My knees are hurting real bad from arthritis. It's just hurting so bad, I don't think I can faint. And I said, well, you got any cayenne pepper in the kitchen? Yes. I said, you got any hand cream? Yeah. I said, do you mind if I try to see if I can help your knee? She said, sure. So we got some hand cream, put some cayenne pepper, a little pinker in your top, put it on there. I tested the back of my hand. I went and I said, put this on your knee. And she put it on. We prayed. We talked a little while. She said, you know what? That pain's gone away. That stuff worked. I said, that worked. Jesus worked. He loves you. And I said, you reckon we could have that Bible study now? I think we could do that. And we had the Bible study. Do you see how the pastor, if he uses both, do you see how if we use both, how it works hand in hand? And again, I'm just no country boy, and I believe it's just, and y'all do it with just country people here, yes? It doesn't have to be high. It doesn't. And so God is He's very clear to me that we are to be, well, first of all, what is our mission? Point the sin-sick soul to Christ. Point people to Christ. And who's responsible? We are. Why? God said so. That's good enough. The boss said so. Because it works. That is the physiology of the gospel that He put together. And that's just how it works. Maybe we can't understand it now, but just as Mary Lou called down to Birmingham a couple months ago, our grandson lives in Birmingham. And he was 4 years old at the time. He's now 5. He's 5 now, right? And he is 4. And he asked Mary Lou FaceTimes him every night. If not once or twice or 3 times. All the grandkids. And she's talking to Aiden, and Aiden asks a question, so Mary Lou answers it. And he goes, why? Y'all remember that. Both as parents, grandparents, or as us as 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds. And she explains it again to him, and he goes, why? And she explains it again, and he goes, why? Well, finally, as a parent, a grandparent, you say, well, when you get a little bit bigger, you'll understand. When you get a little older, you understand. And God says to us, when you get to heaven, there's some things I'll explain to you. You just don't figure it out now. Just do what I tell you. And that's what we tell our grandkids. That's what we told our kids. And that's what God